Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all the inputs. This has really been very rich and has had a lot of substance and content. So we thank all those who participated, and we had 4 segments. We had a head of state, we had African business leaders, and we had international organizations, and we've just had concluding remarks. So this has really been really good inputs. I just want to conclude by saying that some of the inputs have really painted this new profile of Africa, which I think has been reiterated by a number of speakers, including the heads of state. And the new profile of Africa is that Africa is indeed a new frontier. And it should no longer be seen as Africa that's about to rise, because it is Africa that has risen. And when we started the sessions, we even had a lion roaring. It was said that the lion had been sleeping, so now once it roars, it means that it's wide awake. So Africa has risen, and it is becoming every day easier to do business on the African continent. Many places in the world have great constraints for doing business, but at the same time, when we look at Africa, we say that the constraints are being eliminated, and it is becoming easier and easier to do business in Africa, because it presents what other speakers said, very, very good returns. And if you want really good returns, as Mr. Tony Elumelu said, come to Africa. Africa presents risk-adjusted returns, and it's a market in which investments are taking place at $100 billion a year. So that already tells you that this 3.3 market territory is given to really good returns. And that is a new profile of Africa that is being presented to the world. And what are the growth drivers? We've got a number of growth drivers on the continent, and certainly the Agenda 2063, which is the blueprint policy trajectory that the continent has decided on, is a key growth driver, because as you look at it, it also incorporates the Sustainable Development Goals that have been adopted by the world and more. But it is also underpinned by another key growth driver, which is evolving and will evolve more and more in time, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement is going to be a massive growth driver, which we would like everyone to look at. And the enablers are going to be the institutions that Africa is putting in place, institutions, but also the role of the private sector, that the private sector can play a key role as an enabler of this growth that we want to see, including private-public partnerships that should be embarked upon to drive this growth. And the other enablers are going to be more and more embarking on security and safety measures, and the focus really should be on growing the private sector, focusing on the youth and the women, and also focusing on the environment, because the environment is key in everything that we're going to do. The key sectors that we should focus on clearly are agriculture, as well as industrializing the continent. And the transformational processes, well, the sectors should also include energy, should also include manufacturing. Those should be the key sectors that should drive the growth that we want to see, including many others on the continent. And the transformational processes should be to ensure that there's sustainable development on the continent and creating markets and opportunities. What I really liked from an input that was made also by the IFC is that all of us should be looking out for bankable projects, not waiting for the projects to come to us. We should be out there looking for these projects because there are so many of them. And with all this, Africa is clearly set for the growth that awaits it. And as we've heard, it is a continent that is registering enormous growth on a number of levels. Many countries and economies on the African continent continue to grow at high levels, much more than what we are seeing in other parts of the world. So we say once again to the Japanese businesses, Africa is open for business. Thank you very much.